A few weeks ago, I almost texted my mother, finally getting the recognition I deserve. Mom. Instead, I sat in the 16th floor bathroom, clutching a folder I had no business possessing, knowing that if I touched what was inside, either my career or the CEO's would end. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, casting harsh shadows on the financial documents that would expose $9 million in fraud. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. My name is Elena Walsh. And at 34, I'd spent the last 8 years clawing my way up through the testosterone-soaked hierarchy of Brixton Dynamics. Senior Financial Analyst. The title sounded impressive at cocktail parties, but in the gleaming towers of Denver's financial district, it meant I was still one rung below where I deserved to be. The promise had been dangled in front of me for months. Regional Deputy Director of Financial Analysis. My boss, Kara Moon, had all but wrapped it in a bow. Start mentally preparing yourself, she'd said during our last one-on-one, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her iPad. The board meets next week, but it's just a formality. I'd earned it, quarter after quarter. My projections had been within 2% of actuals. I'd identified cost savings that put 7 figures back in the company's pocket. While my male colleagues left at 5 for their golf games and whiskey tastings, I stayed until the janitors knew my coffee order. Then Victor Granger arrived. Our new CEO swept in like he owned the place, which, technically, he did after the board's vote. Slick silver hair, Tom Ford suits, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He had that particular brand of confidence that came from moving money around rather than earning it. The kind of man who name-dropped Davos and Jackson Hole in casual conversation. Elena, he'd said during our first meeting, pronouncing my name like it was a wine he was considering but would probably send back. I've heard impressive things. Kara speaks highly of your attention to detail. The pause before attention to detail should have been my first warning. Victor brought his own people, of course. They always do. Marcus Avery appeared 3 weeks after Victor's grand entrance, fresh MBA, weak handshake, and the kind of nervous laugh that made you want to check your wallet. He shadowed me for a month, asking questions that revealed he couldn't read a cash flow statement if his trust fund depended on it. Just showing him the ropes, Kara assured me. You know how it is. New CEO wants his guys to understand our processes. I knew exactly how it was, but I also knew my record was unassailable. My models had saved the company millions. My analyses had prevented 2 potentially catastrophic acquisitions. The promotion was mine. The April morning when the announcement would drop, I wore my best suit, the charcoal Armani I'd bought with last year's bonus. I'd even splurged on a blowout the night before, walking through Brixton's marble lobby. I caught my reflection and thought, this is what a regional deputy director looks like. The email hit at 9:47 a.m. Please join us in congratulating Marcus Avery on his appointment to Regional Deputy Director of Financial Analysis. I read it 3 times before the words rearranged themselves into meaning. Around me, the office hummed with its usual morning rhythm, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, the espresso machine hissing its expensive steam. Nobody else had stopped breathing. My hands didn't shake. They went cold, like all the blood had rushed to protect more vital organs. I closed my laptop with deliberate calm and walked to the bathroom, where I locked myself in the handicapped stall and stared at the pristine white wall. 8 years. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, of catching errors that would have cost millions, of building models that became company standard. For what? So some empty suit with the right golf handicap and the right last name could leapfrog over me? I didn't cry. Women like me learned early that tears in the office were career suicide. Instead, I did what I'd always done. I calculated the market value of my skills, the probability of finding better opportunities, the exact amount of severance I could negotiate. But first, I needed to understand why. Not the obvious why. I had ovaries and opinions, a combination that made certain men break out in hives. I needed to know the real why, the spreadsheet why, the story behind the numbers. Because in finance, there's always a story behind the numbers. And Victor Granger had just made the fatal mistake of thinking I wouldn't dig until I found it. That night, I killed a bottle of Malbec in my Capitol Hill apartment. The Denver skyline glittered through my floor-to-ceiling windows, a view I'd earned, now mocking me with its indifference. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, cursor blinking in the resignation letter I'd started and deleted 17 times. Dear Victor, felt too personal. To whom it may concern. Felt like admitting I'd already been erased. By 2 a.m., I'd settled on liquid courage and terrible decisions. I texted Kara, "We need to talk about Marcus." The typing bubbles appeared immediately, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally, let's focus on transition planning. Coffee Monday. Transition planning. Corporate speak for shut up and train your replacement. I threw my phone across the room. It bounced off the designer cushions I'd bought to prove I'd made it. Everything in this apartment was proof I'd made it. The promotion was supposed to be the final piece. Monday came with a hangover and humiliation. I sat through the morning staff meeting while Marcus fumbled through a presentation I'd created, mispronouncing amortization and confusing gross margin with markup. Victor nodded along like he was unveiling the theory of relativity. I was heading back to my desk when I heard it. Voices carrying from conference room C, the one with the broken door that didn't quite close. Investment portfolio looking sketchy as hell, but if Victor signed off on it. The voice belonged to James Park from Internal Audit. That's the thing, another voice replied. Sandra from Compliance. He fast-tracked approval, bypassed the usual channels, $9 million, and we're just supposed to pretend that's normal? My feet stopped moving. 9 million. In my world, that wasn't a rounding error. It was a red flag waving in a hurricane. Marcus is listed as the project lead, Sandra continued. Kid can barely use Excel, but suddenly he's managing major capital allocation? Keep your voice down, James hissed. You know what happened to the last person who questioned Victor's special projects? Their footsteps faded toward the elevator. I stood frozen in the hallway. Processing. Marcus, who couldn't calculate ROI without a calculator, was supposedly managing $9 million in investments. I went back to my desk and pulled up our internal project database. Nothing. Tried the capital expenditure reports. Nothing. But I'd been around long enough to know that nothing often meant something. That afternoon, Kara finally graced me with her presence. She slid into my office and closed the door, her usual confidence replaced with something that looked like fear. Elena, I need you to listen very carefully, she began, fidgeting with her wedding ring. The Marcus situation. It's complicated. There are dynamics at play that... Dynamics? I interrupted. Is that what we're calling discrimination now? It's not. She stopped, rubbed her temples. Look, I fought for you. I need you to know that. But Victor has his own vision for the department. A vision that includes Marcus managing mysterious $9 million portfolios? The color drained from her face. Where did you hear that? Does it matter? She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Elena, I'm trying to protect you here. Whatever you think you know, whatever you've heard, drop it. Focus on your work. Keep your head down. Please. Like you did. The words came out sharper than intended. How's that working out for you, Kara? Still pretending you have any actual authority while Victor runs his own game? She flinched. For a moment, the polished executive facade cracked, and I saw something raw underneath. You think I don't know what this is? She whispered. You think I don't see what's happening, but some battles. She stood abruptly. Just be careful. Elena. That's all I can say. After she left, I stared at my monitor, the numbers blurring together. Kara Moon, who'd climbed higher than any woman in Brixton's history, was scared. That should have been my warning to back off. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet and titled it Special Projects Analysis. If they wanted to play games with my career, fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd spent 8 years learning every loophole, every hidden pathway, every forgotten corner of Brixton's financial systems. They'd taken my promotion. They'd insulted my intelligence. They'd assumed I'd quietly accept it like a good little soldier. They had no idea what they'd just started. The thing about corporate security is that it's designed to keep outsiders out, not insiders in. My admin access from the Phoenix Integration Project, a merger analysis I'd led 6 months ago, should have been revoked. Should have been. But Brixton's IT department was overwhelmed and understaffed, like most corporate tech teams. They'd forgotten about me, and I wasn't about to remind them. At 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, I sat in my home office with a glass of whiskey and started digging. The main servers were a maze of nested folders, buried reports, and creative accounting. But I'd spent years learning to read between the cells of a spreadsheet. The first breadcrumb appeared in a folder labeled Strategic Development Initiatives. Innocent enough? Inside were dozens of projects, most legitimate. But one stood out. Project Atlas, Confidential R&D Fund. $9 million. Allocated in March, just weeks after Victor arrived. I traced the approval chain, Victor's digital signature, Marcus listed as project manager. But the details? Sparse. Vague descriptions about emerging technology investments and strategic partnership development. Corporate lorem ipsum designed to look meaningful while saying nothing. The money had been dispersed to 3 companies: Pinnacle Innovations LLC, Vertex Solutions Group, and Meridian Tech Ventures. I'd never heard of any of them. A quick search in our vendor database came up empty. These weren't partners, they were ghosts. I switched to public records, pulling up incorporation documents. All 3 companies were registered in Delaware, the corporate equivalent of wearing a ski mask. But they shared a registered agent address in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing, following paper trails. The New Mexico address appeared again, linked to a 4th company, Granger Capital Associates. Dissolved in 2018. Former managing partner, Victor Granger. Other partner, Emery Vance. The name triggered a memory. I'd seen it before, buried in old board meeting minutes. Emery Vance had pitched Brixton on a joint venture back in 2018. The board had passed, citing concerns about financial transparency. Now, 6 years later, Victor was CEO, and $9 million had flowed to companies connected to his former partner. I screenshot everything, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't just favoritism or corporate politics. This was fraud. But I needed more. Financial crime required proof of intent, patterns, concrete evidence that would stand up to scrutiny. I dove deeper, pulling wire transfer records, bank routing numbers, transaction dates. The money had moved in carefully structured payments, just under the amounts that would trigger additional oversight. At 3 a.m., I found the smoking gun. An email chain, buried in a misnamed folder. Victor to Marcus. Ensure the Atlas distributions proceed as discussed. E.V. Expects final payment by month end. Marcus's reply, confirmed. Documentation adjusted per your instructions. Adjusted documentation. In my world, that meant one thing. Cooking the books. I printed everything, old school, but digital files could disappear. Paper was harder to erase. The printer hummed in the darkness, spitting out page after page of evidence. Transaction records, shell company registrations, email chains, a clear pattern of embezzlement disguised as innovation funding. By sunrise, I had a banker's box full of proof. $9 million, siphoned from Brixton to Victor's shadow network. Marcus was the perfect frontman, too incompetent to understand what he was signing, too ambitious to ask questions. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt the weight of what came next. Kara's warning echoed in my head. Some battles. But this wasn't about battles anymore. This was about crime. Federal crime. The kind that destroyed companies and sent executives to prison. I made coffee and stared at the box. 3 choices lay before me. Walk away and let them win. take it to the board and hope they acted. Or go nuclear. FBI, SEC, the works. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Marcus Avery had updated his profile. Excited to announce my new role as Regional Deputy Director at Brixton Dynamics. Looking forward to driving innovation and growth. Innovation, growth. I picked up the box and headed for my car. Some people drove innovation, others drove getaway cars. It was time everyone learned the difference. The war for my promotion was over, but the war for Brixton's future had just begun. Wednesday morning, I logged into my work email to find my password had been reset. The IT system claimed it was routine security maintenance. In 8 years, I'd never experienced routine maintenance that targeted just one account. They knew. I called ET, playing dumb. Hey, my email's acting weird. Can you help? Oh, Ms. Walsh. The text voice was strained. Yeah, we're updating security protocols. I'll reset it for you now. The new password worked, but half my archived emails were gone. Specifically, anything related to Project Atlas or the Phoenix integration that gave me admin access. Someone was cleaning house. At lunch, Jenny Cardell slipped into the seat across from me in the cafeteria. We'd started at Brixton the same week, suffered through the same toxic boys' club together. She glanced around nervously before speaking. Elena, I'm just going to say this once. Her voice barely carried across the table. Delete everything from May's reconciliation project. Trust me. Jenny. What? I can't. She was already standing. Just be smart and maybe update your resume. She fled before I could respond, leaving me with a salad I couldn't stomach and a growing certainty that the walls were closing in. Thursday brought confirmation. Kara emerged from her office looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. She walked past my desk without making eye contact. The same woman who'd mentored me for 3 years couldn't even look at me. Her assistant later mentioned all of Kara's meetings had been mysteriously canceled for the next week. By Friday, the pattern was clear. Colleagues who usually chatted by the coffee machine suddenly had urgent calls when I approached. My access to the financial modeling systems was downgraded to view only. Even the security guard who always asked about my weekend avoided my eyes. Then came the summons. Victor would like to see you in his office. Now. His assistant delivered the message with the sympathy of someone announcing a terminal diagnosis. Victor's corner office was a shrine to his ego. Deal tombstones, photos with politicians, a putting green that probably cost more than most people's cars. He sat behind his massive desk, fingers steepled, that cold smile playing at his lips. Elena, please, sit. I remained standing. What can I do for you, Victor? Direct. I like that. He leaned back, studying me like a specimen. You know, I built my career on reading people, understanding their motivations, their limits. Fascinating. You're angry about Marcus. It wasn't a question. I understand. You're talented, driven. You believe in meritocracy. He said the last word like it was quaint, a relic from a more naive time. I believe in competence. Do you? He stood, moved to the window overlooking downtown Denver. Because competent people understand hierarchy. They understand that some decisions happen above their pay grade. They understand discretion. Are we talking about Marcus's promotion or his $9 million project? The silence stretched between us. When he turned back, the mask had dropped. You're swimming in deep water, Ms. Walsh. Currents you don't understand. Undertows that have swallowed stronger swimmers than you. Is that a threat? It's a kindness. He returned to his desk, pulled out a folder. Your personnel file. Impressive record. It would be a shame if certain discrepancies came to light. That Phoenix integration analysis, for instance. Some might question whether you had the authority to access those systems, whether company data was improperly handled. My blood turned to ice. He was rewriting history, setting me up as the criminal. I've done nothing wrong. Haven't you? He smiled, that shark's grin that probably charmed investors while he picked their pockets. You've been accessing systems without authorization, downloading sensitive financial data. That banker's box you took home Tuesday night? Yes, we have security cameras in the parking garage. What would an FBI investigator think about that? The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Report the fraud. And suddenly, I'm the disgruntled employee who stole company data. My word against the CEO's. I suggest, Victor continued, voice soft as a snake's hiss, that you focus on your remaining duties. Stop digging wells in the desert, Elena. You'll only find sand. And if I don't, he shrugged, then you'll discover how quickly 8 years of hard work can be reframed as 8 years of subtle embezzlement. Amazing what forensic accountants can find when they're given the right narrative. I left his office on unsteady legs. In the elevator, my reflection looked pale. Hunted. They weren't just going to bury the fraud, they were going to bury me with it. But Victor had made one miscalculation. He'd shown his hand, confirmed the fraud was real, the threat existential. And he'd revealed something else. They were scared enough to threaten, scared enough to frame me, which meant I had more power than they wanted me to know. The elevator opened to the lobby. I walked out with my head high, already planning my next move. They thought they'd cornered me. They had no idea what a cornered analyst could do with a box full of evidence and nothing left to lose. Saturday morning, I met Raymond Dillard at a dive bar in Aurora, far from Brixton's glass towers and watchful eyes. He looked exactly like what he was, a corporate exile nursing whiskey at 11 a.m., wearing a suit that had seen better decades. Elena Walsh, he said as I slid into the booth, the golden girl who actually believed the bullshit about hard work paying off. And you're the cautionary tale who tried to do the right thing. He laughed, bitter as his whiskey. Tried being the operative word. You know what they said when I reported the first laundering scheme? Raymond's lost perspective. Too much stress. Maybe he needs some time off. What did you find? Same thing you did. Probably. Shell companies, offshore accounts, money moving in circles until it disappeared. Except mine was smaller, only 2 million. Victor was hungrier back then. I pulled out a folder, showed him my findings. His eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. Jesus Christ, 9 million? He's gotten bold. He looked up sharply. You have copies, right? Multiple locations? I'm not an idiot. No, just an idealist. Same disease that got me fired. He signaled for another drink. You know what your problem is? You're thinking like an analyst, looking for logic, justice, proper channels. But Victor thinks like a criminal. And criminals don't play by spreadsheet rules. So what do I do? Raymond studied me over his glass. You need media, FBI's too slow, board's too compromised. But a front-page story, that moves faster than cover-ups. You know someone? Lana Ruiz at the Denver Post, best investigative journalist in the state. More importantly, she hates corporate corruption almost as much as she loves Pulitzers. He scribbled a number on a napkin. Tell her Ray sent you. And Elena, don't use your work phone. I met Lana at Union Station, the Sunday crowd providing cover. She was younger than expected, with sharp eyes that had probably seen too much. Ray says you have something big, she said without preamble. I handed her a summary folder. She read in silence, occasionally whistling low. This is extensive. You have documentation for all of this? Every transaction, every email, every shell company registration. Why come to me? Why not the authorities? Because Victor Granger is setting me up to take the fall. I need the story out before I become the story. She nodded slowly. I'll need to verify independently, cross-check sources. This could take. We don't have time. He's already erasing evidence, threatening witnesses. Then we need something fresh. Something he can't deny or spin. She leaned forward. Can you get him on record, admitting to any of this? He's too smart for that. Everyone's too smart until they think they've already won. She pulled out a small device. Digital recorder, uploads to cloud storage in real time, if you can get him talking. Monday morning, I scheduled a meeting with Victor through his assistant. Regarding transition planning and my future at Brixton, I said, let him think I was surrendering. I also sent an email to the entire finance team about a mandatory compliance training in Conference Room A at 2 p.m., the room that shared a wall with Victor's office, the room I'd tested previously for sound bleed. At 1:45, I walked into Victor's office with the recorder in my blazer pocket. Elena. He looked pleased, like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. I'm glad you've reconsidered your position. I've been thinking about what you said, about understanding hierarchies. Good, that's very good. He gestured to a chair. I knew you were smart enough to see reason. The thing is, I continued, remaining standing, I need to understand what I'm agreeing to. This Project Atlas, if I'm going to stay quiet, I need to know my exposure. His eyes narrowed. Your exposure is whatever I say it is. No. Victor. See. I've been doing this longer than Marcus. If this unravels, investigators won't buy that I knew nothing. My signature is on preliminary reports. My models were used for projections. So I need to know, what exactly did you and Emery Vance use that $9 million for? The name hit like a slap. His mask slipped for just a second, showing something ugly underneath. You've been busy, he said quietly. I'm thorough. It's why you should have promoted me instead of trying to bury me. He stood, pacing to the window. Emery is a visionary, someone who understands that real innovation requires flexibility. Traditional channels are too slow, too bureaucratic. So you stole $9 million. I redirected funds toward guaranteed returns. His voice hardened. Do you know what Brixton's stock price has done since I arrived? Up 30%. Because I make the hard choices. Because I understand that sometimes you need to grease wheels that shouldn't need greasing. Kickbacks, you mean? I mean ensuring this company's future. He turned back, eyes cold. That $9 million has already generated 15 in secured contracts. Contracts that wouldn't exist if we'd followed your precious rules. And Marcus? Marcus does what he's told and asks no questions. Unlike some people. He moved closer, looming. You want to know your exposure, Elena? It's total. Because if this unravels, as you put it, I'll make sure you're holding the threads. You can't. I can. I will. Your access to those systems was unauthorized. Your downloads were theft. Your little investigation. He smiled. Corporate espionage, industrial sabotage, take your pick. My lawyers will make it stick. The door burst open. His assistant looked panicked. Mr. Granger, there's a Denver Post reporter in the lobby asking about Project Atlas and shell companies. Security doesn't know. Victor's face went white. He looked at me, understanding dawning. You stupid bitch, he breathed. No, I said, pulling out the recorder. Just thorough. Next door. Conference room. A erupted as 20 finance team members heard every word through the thin walls. Their shocked voices carried clearly. I walked out as security arrived, leaving Victor standing among the ruins of his carefully constructed scheme. The recorder had already uploaded everything to the cloud. Lana would have her story. The FBI would have their evidence, and I would have my justice. Tuesday morning, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. The Denver Post's website had crashed from traffic. The headline screamed across every news app. Brixton Dynamics CEO caught in 9-meter fraud scheme. Lana had worked through the night, crafting a masterpiece of investigative journalism, every transaction detailed, every shell company exposed, and at the center, Victor's own words from the recording, damning and undeniable. By 8 a.m., The FBI had raided Brixton's headquarters. I watched from a coffee shop across the street as agents carried out boxes of evidence. My phone rang constantly, colleagues, reporters, numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. The image that would define the scandal came at 10:47 a.m. Victor Granger, the untouchable CEO with his Tom Ford suits and Davos connections, being led out in handcuffs. His silver hair was disheveled, his face a mask of fury as photographers swarmed. The photo went viral within minutes. I was in my apartment packing when the FBI knocked. 2 agents, professional and polite, with a subpoena for my testimony and evidence. Ms. Walsh, the lead agent said, reviewing my boxes of documentation. This is exceptionally thorough work. You've made our job significantly easier. I'm an analyst, I replied. Thorough is what I do. The next weeks blurred together. Grand jury testimony, DOJ interviews, forensic accountants confirming every detail I'd uncovered. The investigation expanded, finding tentacles reaching into other companies, other schemes. Victor wasn't just guilty, he was the center of a web that had stolen millions over years. Marcus folded immediately, turning state's evidence so fast the prosecutors joked about whiplash. He'd kept records of every request Victor made, every document he'd signed without reading. His incompetence became his salvation, too stupid to be a real conspirator. Kara was suspended pending investigation. Though I testified she'd tried to warn me. Her fear made sense now. She'd suspected something was wrong, but lacked the access to prove it. Her career at Brixton was over, but she'd avoid prosecution. The board cleaned house, every Victor appointee, every questionable hire, gone. They brought in a crisis management team, forensic auditors, and a new CEO with a reputation for transparency. Stock price plummeted, then slowly recovered as investors realized the cancer had been cut out. 3 months after that first headline, I sat in a downtown law office for Victor's deposition. He looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit. The magic of his presence evaporated. His lawyers tried everything, claiming entrapment, questioning my motives, arguing the recordings were inadmissible. None of it stuck. The evidence was too clean, the paper trail too clear. He'd been so confident in his power that he'd gotten sloppy. Or maybe he'd always been sloppy, just protected by people too scared to look closely. Ms. Walsh, his lawyer asked during cross-examination. Isn't it true you began this investigation out of spite over being passed for promotion? Yes, I said simply. But what I found had nothing to do with spite and everything to do with federal crime. Victor was convicted on 15 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering, 25 years in federal prison. Emery Vance got 18 years. The shell companies were dissolved. The stolen money traced and recovered. Brixton even managed to claw back most of the $9 million. The promotion I'd wanted so desperately, it disappeared in the restructuring. The entire department was reorganized, my position eliminated. But it didn't matter anymore. The day after Victor's sentencing, my phone rang with opportunities. Private equity firms wanted someone who could spot fraud. Government agencies needed forensic analysts. Corporate boards sought consultants who weren't afraid to ask hard questions. My inbox filled with offers at salaries that made my Brixton compensation look like pocket change. I chose Maverick Capital in Chicago, Senior Vice President of Risk Assessment. They wanted someone who could protect their investments from the Victor Grangers of the world. Someone who understood that spreadsheets could hide crimes as easily as reveal them. The salary was double what Brixton had paid. The respect was genuine. And the best part? They'd hired me specifically because I'd blown up my last company to expose the truth. My first day in Chicago, I got a text from Jenny. Saw the news about your new role. Proud of you. Also, terrified of you. I smiled, looking out at my new view of Lake Michigan. Fear and respect, in the corporate world, they were often the same thing. But I hadn't done it to be feared. I'd done it because someone had to. Because merit should matter more than connections. Because stealing millions should have consequences, even if you wear expensive suits and know the right people. The promotion Victor stole from me had been worth maybe $50,000 in additional salary. The fraud I exposed cost him 25 years of his life. I called that a fair trade. 6 months later, I stood outside Brixton Dynamics one last time. The building looked the same, gleaming glass and steel reaching toward an indifferent sky. But everything inside had changed. New leadership, new policies, new paranoia about compliance that would probably last a generation. I'd come back to Denver for the final depositions, the last administrative cleanup of Victor's mess. My testimony was done. The checks had been written. Justice, such as it was, had been served. The November wind cut through my coat as I stood on the sidewalk, watching people stream in and out for lunch. Some I recognized, survivors of the purge who'd kept their heads down and weathered the storm. They walked differently now, careful and alert, like prey animals who'd learned the scent of predators. I didn't blame them. Trust, once shattered, never quite reassembles the same way. My phone buzzed. Another headhunter, another offer. Since Chicago, I'd become something of a legend in forensic finance circles. The woman who'd brought down Victor Granger. The analyst who'd chosen truth over career. My reputation preceded me into every boardroom, every meeting. Sometimes it opened doors, sometimes it made people nervous. Good. They should be nervous. I pulled out the small digital recorder I'd carried that day with Victor, now just a souvenir. Its purpose served. Such a simple device to end a career, destroy a reputation, save a company. David's sling against Goliath's armor. Elena? I turned to find Kara Moon walking toward me. She looked older but somehow lighter. The weight of complicity lifted from her shoulders. She'd landed at a nonprofit, I'd heard, using her skills for something that mattered. Kara? We stood awkwardly, two survivors of the same war on different sides. I heard about Chicago, SVP at 34. Impressive. You warned me, I said. I should have listened. She shook her head. No. You did exactly what you should have done. What I was too scared to do. She paused. I knew something was wrong. The numbers, the way Victor operated, but I convinced myself it wasn't my problem. That keeping my head down was the smart play. It was the safe play. Safe. She laughed bitterly. I played it safe right into a suspension and career implosion. You took the risk and came out stronger. We parted with promises to keep in touch that we both knew were lies. Some relationships couldn't survive that kind of honesty. But I didn't regret it. Kara had made her choice, and I'd made mine. Both had consequences. As I walked back to my rental car, I passed a newsstand with financial magazines. Victor's downfall had made him infamous. Business school case studies were already being written about the Brixton scandal. His name would live forever as a cautionary tale, a warning about hubris and greed. My name was in those stories too. The whistleblower. The analyst who wouldn't stay quiet. Some painted me as a hero, others as an opportunist. The truth, as always, was more complicated. I hadn't set out to be a hero. I'd wanted a promotion I'd earned. When that was stolen, I'd wanted answers. When those answers revealed crimes, I'd wanted justice. Each step had led to the next. Anger crystallizing into purpose. That leather journal sat in my Chicago apartment now, filled with every detail of the investigation. Not for publication or posterity, but for me. A reminder of what one person could do when pushed too far. A warning to myself about the price of both silence and speech. Because here's what they don't tell you about being a whistleblower. The victory is never clean. You don't get your old life back. You don't get to pretend it never happened. You become the person who burned it all down. And that reputation follows you forever. But I could live with that. I could live with being feared rather than liked. Respected rather than welcomed. I could live with the sideways glances and the whispered warnings. What I couldn't have lived with was knowing. Knowing about the fraud and doing nothing. Knowing Victor was stealing millions while preaching about innovation. Knowing I'd been stepped on not because I wasn't good enough, but because I was too good to control. The rental car's heater kicked in as I pulled into traffic. leaving Brixton behind for the last time. Chicago waited, along with a dozen new cases of corporate malfeasance to investigate. There would always be another Victor Granger, another Marcus Avery, another $9 million hidden in shell companies. And there would always be people like me, the ones who noticed, the ones who dug, the ones who refused to shut up and color inside the lines. He took the promotion I deserved. I took the next 25 years of his life. In the end, we both got exactly what we earned. The only difference? I could sleep at night. He stole my career. I only took back the truth. And sometimes, in this world, the truth is worth more than any title. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced injustice at work? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your experiences.